so excited to meet you. Like for real, I am.
Hey man, it's the feeling is mutual. I am a big fan of yours and everything you're doing. I first saw you years ago on CNN, and I think you were talking about Morehouse at the time. And yeah, you probably remember what it was about. But you've done great work, man, with the Capital Prep schools, man. And I just think that we should be trying to duplicate what you're doing throughout the country to help our kids. So it is exciting for me to be on here because I do follow much more than just sports.
No, and anyone who any of the million people who follow you, they're going to be disappointed because I'm not interested in your take on sports because I think you're so I think you are so important to our community, so meaningful in your presentation of your manhood, of your fatherhood, of your husbandry, like across the board.
Thank
But
you.
but let's get started here. You're clearly a big sports fan. Oberlin?
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. So I finished high school in Cleveland, which is about 45 minutes east of Oberlin College. And
Okay.
so I was a good athlete in high school.
No,
And,
not
I
good.
was
You a Hall of
well,
Fame. I come
in
on.
Hall of Fame in my high school, Holy Name High School. But I was recruited for football and basketball at the Division III level. And so most of the schools that recruited me were lily white, very
Okay.
small black populations. And Oberlin actually recruited me for football. And I had an afternoon visit there, and it wasn't much. I wasn't impressed, so I wasn't even thinking about Oberlin. Then they called me about basketball months later, and my father said he was home. He answered the phone, and he told me when I got home, "Hey, Oberlin called about basketball." I was like, "I already visited Oberlin. I'm not interested." And he said, "Well, it sounded like it was a brother, the coach." And I was like, "Oh, all right." He was like, "You might well." I was like, "Okay, maybe." He said, "Why don't you go take a visit? It's a great school." I really wasn't
Oh, it's
very
a
familiar
fantastic
before.
school,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
for
And he was
big
like,
time
"It's
sports, it's not.
no, no, no." But he was like, "It's a great school, so why don't you just go visit it again?" So I went up there, stayed for a weekend, and I stayed with a basketball player. And the team, believe it or not, which is very unusual at the Division III level, our team was like 80% black. And so that was unique. I wanted a school with a nice black population, and Oberlin had that. Most Division III schools, one, at least that I visited, didn't have much of a black population, and two, they only had students from like that state and maybe a couple surrounding states. Whereas Oberlin, because of its history, had a great black population. At that point, it was maybe 10%.
That's
They
huge.
had a You're right, right. They had a black dorm called the African Heritage House. You didn't have to live there, but you could. And so it was, I had a great time that weekend, and I went back and was like, I'm going to Oberlin, And the thing about Oberlin, it was the first, you may know this, it was the first school in America to accept African Americans.
Yes,
It wasn't the first one that had a black graduate, but it was the first school where it accepted students regardless of race. And so at the turn of the 20th century, so the early 1900s, two out of every three black college graduates had gone to Oberlin.
now
And
that
so,
part I knew that it had a rich history, like Bates,
yep,
for being one of those
yep,
places where black people could go that were the whitest places on earth.
yep, yep, yep. So so it had students from all over the country, even all over the world. I met my wife there. She's from New York City. There were more people from New York and than there were from
Oh,
Ohio.
okay.
So it was a really unique experience. I got to play basketball there, and so yeah, that's how I ended up at Oberlin. And I went there with Adrian Fenty, who
Okay.
was the former mayor of D.C.
Yeah.
He was a year behind me, and then her name, I can't believe her name's escaping me. The mayor of Baltimore around the same time, Stephanie Stephanie
Yes, I know
Rawlings.
exactly.
Stephanie
Yes.
Rawlings. She was
Cool
like a
sister.
freshman when I was a senior. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
I mean, a lot
Stacked.
of lot of productive people there.
So you occupy a space that for me has always been interesting. Your sports knowledge is immaculate. There's, you wouldn't be an FS1 in the seat that you're in if you didn't have that. You could stop there and you would be the guy and couldn't go out to a bar without somebody coming over and asking you for a hot take, and you'd be the king of every cookout, right?
Right.
But you didn't stop there. You seem to have this interest in doing something bigger than sports. Where does that come from?
Yeah, so when I was at Oberlin, my senior year, I became a Christian. I grew up in the Catholic Church, like a lot of people grew up in church, but really became committed about my faith my senior year at Oberlin.
What brought that about,
And
if you don't mind me asking? Because I want to get into that.
yeah,
What brought that about?
it's interesting. I started my sophomore year. I started dating a young lady who was a Christian, and she was really the first person that I was close with who exposed me to biblical Christianity.
Okay.
So like really trying to follow the Bible and live it out. And so, I just, in the process of dating her, I started going to Bible studies with her, praying with her. And it was like a year before I really even, like, our relationship was great, but it was like a tug of war because she was trying to live for Christ
Okay.
and I wasn't. And so I wasn't like a terrible person or anything like that, but I wasn't really trying to live for Christ. I was out trying to do my own thing and stuff like that. And so we went to a church about a year after we had been dating. And I really, just being in the atmosphere, the message from the minister really convicted me and let me know that God wasn't pleased with my life the way I was living it. Again, his standards are higher than ours. I wasn't a drug dealer. I wasn't, a gang
No,
banger.
but that's it. But that's an important point, though. A lot of times, because where a lot of parents go wrong is they start with the at least. At least he's
Yeah.
not a drug dealer. At least it's not an F.
Right.
At least he pays for his kids. Like, at
Right.
least. And what I hear you saying is at least is not what your conversation was about. Okay, you were doing the things that decent human beings should do, but that wasn't enough for
Right.
you and your calling.
Right. And that's like I said, God's standard is much higher than ours. God, to your point, is not comparing us to the criminal and saying, oh, like you said, well, at least he's not that. His standard, here's how high his standard is. I'm sure you're aware of the scripture where Jesus said, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery. Now,
By
so
thought alone.
right. So what he's saying, because everybody has probably done that, women looking at men looking at women, right? But what he's saying is, so everyone needs salvation from sin. You might be a person that, compared to other people, is very upstanding. You walk a very moral life, but you still haven't reached my standard. And so that's why he had to die on the cross for our sins. So I realized that, and I fought against it because I didn't want to become a Christian, a Bible believing Christian. I really didn't want to try to live my life for Christ.
It's a
I
rough time
didn't
to
know.
convert. Being a
Right,
young
right.
adult, that's a rough time.
I was
A
20
point
years
guard on the
old.
basketball team,
Yeah.
the good-looking point guard on the basketball team, typically is not the guy you're following to church.
Right, there you
Typically
go.
not.
I'm a Kappa Alpha Psi.
Yep.
I was doing my thing, and I saw men that went to church, but I didn't see brothers that were actually really living for the Lord. So I was like, man, no, I'm not trying to be the only one. That's for dang sure.
You're right.
And but God really just, man, after about 4 or 5 months of running, and I'll share it quickly. So he blessed me with a summer internship. I was going into my senior year of college, and I had a summer internship at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which was the best newspaper or biggest newspaper in the state of Ohio. It was in sports writing. So I did well that summer. They told me, look, when you graduate, we're going to hire you. So you know how, much of a blessing that is, how great you feel like, man, I'm going into my senior year and I have a job waiting for me that pays well, That's a good job. That's a fun job in sports. So I was on top of the world. But then gradually I began to feel like, man, is this all there is to life? Like there has to be more to life than this. And I knew it was Christ, but like I said, I was running, I tried to look for all types of things, loopholes. And as I realized like there has to be more to life than this, I started feeling an emptiness, because it was like, man, I got things are going great. Got a girlfriend I love, a promise of a great job. I was co-captain of the basketball team. Like everything was going well, but I start feeling this emptiness. And I remember my 21st birthday, my father and mother were taking me and my girlfriend out to dinner. And before we went out, I talked with him. We were just running some errands. And I said, what keeps you going in life? I wasn't suicidal or anything like that. But I was just like, you got two sons. We're both in college, both doing well. We have a nice house. What keeps you going once you get all that stuff? He was like, well, you want a promotion on the job, or you want a bigger house, or you want to make more money. You want to make money to help other family members or help the less fortunate. Everything he said was good and fine, but I knew it wasn't going to fulfill the void in my heart. So, man, honestly, God broke me down to where it was either keep running and be empty and miserable inside, or give my life to Christ and get some peace and joy. So on my 21st birthday is actually when I gave my life to Christ.
Wow.
And that, Steve, I was very much into, I think you might be a little younger than me, but I
No,
was very much
we graduated. You graduated in what, 90? What
90,
year?
90.
90. I graduated in
Okay.
92. Yeah.
Okay. So we
Yeah.
same group. So I was very much, as I'm sure you were, into hip hop and all that. And at that time, like really, I grew up in a very pro-black family. Like my father was very pro-black,
Light
but it
skinned men
was,
have to. Otherwise, they'll call us out.
yeah, right, exactly. And my whole family, both of my parents are black, but they like me. And so he was pro-black in a sense of he created a very just feeling of being proud to be black, and being black is great. He wasn't so much pro-black in a like knowledge of black history. You know what I mean? I mean, he knew some, but he
I got what you're
marched in,
saying. He was committed to
yeah,
his
but it wasn't,
community, but he wasn't a
yeah,
scholar in the work. Yeah, I
yes.
got what you're saying.
Yeah, like we always pull for the brothers on TV, the black
Right, right,
quarterback, the
right.
black
When
coach.
right before the news breaks and they say that two people shot you, like, please don't let them be black. Please
Right,
don't let them be
right.
black. Please, yeah, like that kind
Right.
of black. Like I
So
got it, I
yeah,
got it.
exactly. So when I went to college and at that time hip hop was very conscious.
Black medallions, no
KRS
gold.
One, Rakim, yeah, it was a very X Clan, all those groups. And so I started really through that getting into black history. And then I started researching it on my own, and just being in college and being exposed to black professors, taking black history classes. You start talking about blackness on a different level. Like growing up, I was very proud to be black, but it was based on, we our music, we great in sports, all that stuff.
In
You get to,
opposition to whiteness, as opposed to for its
yeah,
authentic purpose, its own intrinsic
yeah,
value.
right. And in college, you start having like you start really talk. I really start being exposed to talking about blackness on a whole different level. You start looking at the economics and the education and the
Faces at the
family stuff,
bottom of the well.
right? Yeah, and then you see, okay, we got a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? Things aren't just all having fun and all that stuff. And because we're great in sports doesn't mean everything is hunky dory, so to speak. And so I really began wanting to help uplift the black community, help improve the quality of life in our communities. And when I became a Christian, that just took that commitment to a whole nother level.
Mm.
And I began reading a lot of books about biblical history, but also about Christian history and African Christian history. Christianity in Africa centuries before America existed, or a thousand years before America existed. And, all of this, black presence in the Bible. And so my Christian walk is very tied in with my desire to help improve the quality of life in the Black community and
The
really
whole
help
book
us
is the whole
become
book
what
is a
God
black
created us to
story.
be as a
Well,
people.
the entire all of it is written in Africa.
Yes.
I mean, still trips me out that the Vatican is in Europe. Like that to me is like,
Right, because
wait,
Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe.
it was just that's the point. Still trips me out that that's the case. You know, last night was the draft, and they go through a lot of the feel good stories. Um, but who are some of the players who you see as stand up brothers? You know, we see so much of the negative,
Yeah.
but who are some of the men who you say that guy right there? Y'all need to understand who this is.
Yeah. I mean, most people know about Steph Curry, and his, commitment to his family. He's a Christian. He really, at Howard, he funded the golf program at Howard. Like, he's a very conscientious brother that wants to, he's a good person, and he just wants to help use his fame and his fortune to really help others. And then LeBron, man, because I haven't seen LeBron in a while. But early in his career, I did a lot of stories on him. I did about 6 cover stories on him for ESPN the magazine and got to know him fairly well. And I'll say this, he, like a lot of people probably, if you don't know his backstory, which most people fear, you feel most people do, you would think he was like a suburban kid. You know how
Yeah,
clean cut, like he
yeah,
comes
yeah,
off
yeah.
very right, very clean cut. Everything, he hasn't had any scandals or anything. But man, his upbringing was rougher than probably 90% of the league. And I don't mean in terms of him fighting or
No, but his
being in
conditions
gangs.
that he grew up in. A
Yeah,
lot of people, and I
yeah,
jump in here because one of the things that people do, we're very coastal in this country. Either you grew up in New York City, and that's supposed to be the roughest place on
yeah.
earth, or you grew up in Los Angeles, and that's supposed to be the roughest place on earth. Not acknowledging that an Akron could be a pretty rough
Oh
situation.
yeah, yeah. And I feel like, and I'm sure you've seen it, man. The black communities, particularly poorer black communities, I feel like African Americans in most cities are facing the same thing. Cleveland,
Everywhere,
Detroit,
everywhere.
Milwaukee, LA. Yeah, it's the same
It's like a
challenges that we have.
franchise. It
Yeah,
literally is like a
yeah.
franchise.
That's a
In
great way to
every
put it.
hood, you have the
Yep.
same phenotype. You
Same,
you have
exactly.
you have the same dilapidated physical structures. You have the same broken people surrounded by places to buy hair, buy
Yep.
Chinese food,
Yep.
buy weed, buy alcohol,
You're right.
and and
Poor
there are no
schools, all that.
right poor schools, and there are no one's ever seen a commercial for a Chinese food spot or a liquor store, but
Great
both
point.
of them thrive in our communities. They thrive like
Yep.
parasites in our communities. No one sees a commercial for a place to buy synthetic hair, but everybody has it. And so
Right.
it is what I often find. I'm in Austin today, and what I often find is that people in their black community often think that their black issues are the only people who
Mm.
they're the only ones who are having those issues. And a lot of times I find myself saying, "No, those folks over there,
Yep.
like
Yep.
right on the other side of this block, their stuff is as jacked
Yep.
up as anybody." And so when I hear of a LeBron coming from Akron, I've been to Akron,
Yeah. You
not a
you see,
vacation,
right. You
not a
know what's
vacation.
going on. And I mean, his mom was 16 when she had him. She wasn't married. Her boyfriend at the time, he was a drug dealer. LeBron never had a relationship with his dad. What helped him was that obviously he was great in sports, and he ended up like playing with guys and becoming really good friends with guys who had stable families, like
Oh,
two-parent households.
okay.
In fact, he missed I think it was fourth grade, he missed like 160 some odd days of school.
That's a
And
lot.
so his one of his good friends on like the football team or something, they LeBron, and they agreed with his mom. They worked it out. She was working her situation out. LeBron lived with his friend and his family, father and mother, and they had like 2 or 3 kids. He lived with them from the 5th grade through the 8th grade, and that stabilized him. He was a good student, obviously still a great athlete. And so he was blessed, man. He had great people around. I know a lot of the people that were around him that really showed him a different way, looked out for him. And so I just think, well, obviously what he has done with his platform is tremendous. So those are the two faces of the league, and they're both great guys. Jaylen Brown in Boston is
Yeah,
really,
talk about Jay because
yeah,
I love it that I love it that Steph is seen for being a solid human being and LeBron is seen for being a solid human being. Both of those. Who are some of the less Jaylen Brown's obviously well known, but who are some of the other brothers in the league who are in fact just off the court solid
yeah.
dudes,
Yeah,
solid dudes?
and Jalen is one I was saying, like you said, he's fairly well known, but he 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 really wants. In fact, he'd be great because I think honestly, man, I feel like a lot of our black athletes need to link up with black educators such as yourself, and they don't even have to be black, but economists, accountants, lawyers, and really dive into how our athletes can use their platform, their connections, in some cases their wealth, to really help the masses of black people. And Jalen is a brother that reminds me of that because he's wants to start like a Black Wall Street, and he's very interested in uplifting black people. So, and then you have I'm trying to think because I can think of a lot of
What about
older guys.
Kyrie?
Well, Kyrie is, in fact, Kyrie grew up right around where I live. I live in South Orange, New Jersey. He grew up in West Orange. I know his dad well. Kyrie is a very thoughtful brother and a good brother, no doubt. Now, and you'll relate to this, I'm sure. Kyrie, like you've seen a lot of black men, it happened with my brother. They, you grow up in your typical American educational system. You get to college perhaps, or even right after college, and you're exposed to black history. Malcolm X, you read the
All
autobiography of
about that
Malcolm X.
changed my
Right,
life. Changed
right,
my life.
right, right.
Changed my life.
Yes.
I came home from the University of Rhode Island jacked up. Like it was. If you looked at me wrong, I was ready
Right,
to go. I
right.
was like, no, it's on and popping
Man,
now. Let's go.
that happens to brothers because you're exposed to what's really going on and what's been going on and why you see in so all because it's a trip, and I know you've seen it. Cities that we think of as, man, you don't want to go there. Cleveland, Detroit, cities like, the hood is rough. Man, there are so many places in those cities where it's just Shangri-La. You know what I mean? There's the hood, and then there are these areas that aren't that far from the hood, but the houses are huge and things are,
Because it
it's
used to be a big community. Pittsburgh is one of those places.
yeah,
Pittsburgh is one of those
it's
places. You just like,
under.
what is going? Like, where are these gigantic houses coming
Right,
from?
right, right. And so when you look around and when you read the autobiography of Malcolm X and start reading the history, it clicks. Oh, this is why I see the dichotomy. I see white people in many cases, most cases, living like this, and black people in many cases in our neighborhoods dilapidated. Our schools worse off than these schools. And so it clicks, and a lot of brothers get angry. My brother went to Howard. He joined the Nation of Islam. He was a year behind me. He joined the Nation of Islam in 1990. And that's when it was getting big with Louis Farrakhan.
Listen, it could have been me.
Yeah,
It could have
right.
been me.
See,
I was
yeah. So
inching,
yeah, and I know a lot of brothers that
circling.
people would. I won't say their names because some of them are on TV, working in sports, who just like you almost joined. Really, because you see them uplifting black men, and it's just a different look and a different mindset for our people. But anyway, my brother and some of my other good friends went through this kind of they grew and developed. They at times they had incredibly radical thoughts, but they
Yes,
went
I
through
know.
it anonymously, right? Kyrie went through it in the public eye. He went through that time of radical, I'm starting to see all this black history. I'm starting to see what's wrong and what's happening, been happening to our people, still happening to our people. And so it's hard to process it right away. But most brothers do it anonymously. He did it in the fishbowl of the NBA. So that's why he made some statements, some comments in the past that, may have rubbed people, including black people, the wrong way. But now you see he's matured, and he sees things a little bit differently, but still very committed to helping people, particularly black and Native American people. And so he's a great brother. But I like, because I'm gonna be honest, all the brothers in the league aren't that thoughtful
No,
and
no, they're not. And and
you know
and one of the many reasons why I wanted to build with you is because you've committed your platform to uplifting our community, and you've done so aggressively. You are not passive about this. Uh, you stand on business as it relates to what needs to happen.
right.
And I would imagine that you've seen the cocoons that are formed around these athletes, uh, coming from the puppy mills that they come from,
Yep.
because the AAU programs that churn them out, that literally use them,
Yep.
men who used to be hustlers and quite frankly still are,
Yep.
running full on programs funded by God knows what,
Right.
and and there's this bubble that these black boys are
Yep.
in, where they are whisked away from anyone who could point out to them that they're being
Yep.
played, anyone who could sit them down. One of the many reasons I've always had respect for Muhammad Ali is he allowed himself to listen.
Yes.
Somebody
Yes.
sat him down and said, "Yo, dog, hold tight,
Yep.
hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Let me holler at you for a second."
Yep.
And he allowed himself to learn about the deep and inherent struggles of black people other than himself, because part of the extrication process begins real early. It
Yep.
can be, oftentimes it could be that white family who takes you in as the 6 foot five eighth grader.
Right.
like
Right.
like
Right.
that, the movie Blindside is not so far off. I know that story over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think we as African Americans are educated in the same with the same we're exposed and educated into the same thought process or mentality of most Americans, which is me, 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 me. Let me get mine, right? I think it's an individualistic culture. And for white people, that works because of the way society is built for their success. And they haven't had the history that we've had here. And that is your mentality, me, 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 me. And and I wouldn't say graduate from college, but you get out of college, go into the NBA, NFL, whatever, and now you have all this money. Guess what you're thinking? Me, 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 me. I gotta get mine. I gotta floss. I gotta get the platinum chain and all this and that. Rather than, okay, how can I help my people? And I think that, to your point, for that to shift, you have to be exposed to other African Americans who know the truth,
And
like you
don't
said about
want
Malcolm X.
anything from
And
you.
right, well, that's the key too,
Who can be
and it will share.
proximate, but not trying to get put on by you,
Right,
not your employee.
right, which is challenging when they're making so much money.
You,
And
you know,
even sometimes well-meaning people see the dollar signs and how it can help them. But that's
just
why I said,
just the visibility alone is a currency for many people. Just being able to say that
yes,
you're
true.
proximate to such and such. But you said something about how black people are educated. Most black people don't. They realize, but they don't realize that 95, if not 97% of all the people who taught you how to do anything were white.
Yes. Yep.
All day
Yep.
during the most formative years, up to and through college and graduate school.
Yeah.
And so they taught you what a good student is. They taught you what smart is. They taught you what a bad behaved person was. They taught you. And mostly they taught you, if you're a black male, that you are not a good
Yep.
student. You are not a
Yep.
good steward and you are a bad person. It's the numbers just don't
Yep.
lie. The
Yep.
suspension rates among African Americans males are through the roof and so wildly disproportionate. Many of the young men who are great athletes were not great students,
Right.
not
Right.
at all, and we're not expected to be. I mean,
And see, that's the thing. Like, can you imagine if these dudes were educated? And I'm not, and I know you don't mean this either. We're not saying they aren't intelligent.
no. I
We're
said good
saying they
students.
aren't educated. There is a big difference. Some of these dudes are incredibly intelligent, but don't have good educations, aren't
Look
educated, right? There's a
at where they go.
difference.
Look at where they had the opportunity to go to school. Look at
Right.
these sorry behind schools that nobody, not even the people who work in them, would ever send their children to, ever,
Well,
like under any circumstances.
and see that's why I like what you're doing. And this, and you, I know you know that. I haven't seen you talk about this, but I'm sure you've mentioned it before. A lot of the people that are against, I'm talking about black people. A lot of our black leaders that are against like charter schools and all this send their kids to private
No, no,
schools.
no. Let me
Most
tell
of
you.
them, all of them.
Let me be clear. Let me be even clearer than that. They're disgusting. They're disgusting because they're the ones who call me. Hey, doc, can I holler at you for a second? Sure, Senator. How can I help you? Uh, my niece. Yeah, what's going on with your niece? She's on your waiting list. Word? Wow. Hmm. Is there anything you can do? Well, Senator, if I did anything, that would be against the law. But you could do something. What's her number? She's 24. Okay, she's number 24 on our waiting list, Senator, so I can help you. Guarantee your daughter gets in. Give me 25 more seats.
There you go.
She's in.
There you go.
Doc, I can't do that. Well, I know you won't, but I don't know you can't.
Right. And
Let me,
they're voting and promoting laws against your schools like yours.
every single day.
And what
Listen, we're opening a school in Connecticut, in my hometown of Middletown, Connecticut, where Wesleyan is, an Oberlin type
yep,
school.
yep.
And top applicant, yada, yada, yada. And a black state commissioner is standing in the way with white Democrats.
Yep.
They're standing in the way. But we won't get to that in a second. But where I want to go back to, because I think you said something a moment ago when they came to the door. Sorry.
Oh, that's all.
Um,
I
but they would have kept knocking if I didn't. So you mentioned about many of these brothers getting together. We all know of the time when Jim Brown pulled people together
Yep.
to have a conversation. One of my former students is Andre Drummond.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's the CNN piece that you saw. The kid that I was picking up in the morning was Andre.
Wow. Wow. Man, that's great. That
But
is great.
I'm gonna state it just as we talk about people who are better than they are athletes, better people than they are athletes. I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete, but even better
Yep.
person. And it's because in part his mom makes sure that other people, the hangers on, what one time he referred to as sharks, are not too close to him.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the challenges, I think, for a lot of these young men is trusting other men. That,
Yes.
look, son, I don't want anything from you. Like, you've never bought me a dinner, and you're liable not to ever get the chance to
Yep.
buy me dinner. I'm older than you are. I have enough money to pay for both of us. I'm not going to take us anywhere that I can't afford two meals. Um, so what can we do to start to talk to some of these brothers and get them to understand their pure power? Because you do get to, they hear you. Like they,
Yeah.
I've seen your opinion matters about in some real and in some real ways. So they care what
Yeah,
you say.
man, it's that's the $1 million question. First, I think you hit it on the head because I've talked to black coaches who say that they feel like black players have trouble with black male authority because they don't grow up seeing it, and so it's a tough. Like, look, you do have things like the Players Association. If you can get an audience with them, then maybe you can. And look, I actually think, man, there needs to be something like it's just a name. It could be any name, but the Association of African American Athletes,
Yeah.
because as you know, there are black advocacy groups in every field of endeavor. There's the National Association of Black Journalists. There's engineers. I'm sure there's educators,
Social workers,
whatever. Yeah,
educators, everything.
everything.
Yep.
Lawyers,
Yep.
doctors,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
but not the two wealthiest the two careers that the wealthiest blacks are in, sports and entertainment. Because if you look at the top 10 African American, the wealthiest African Americans, in the top 10, probably 7 of them will have done it through sports or entertainment.
Yeah.
Jay-Z,
There. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
LeBron, Oprah, Bob Johnson. Then there might be a couple real estate guys, but most of them were from sports and entertainment. Michael Jordan, and they don't have a black advocacy group.
Well,
And even
I
though
wonder.
you have like the Players Association, they still have to look out for the white players, the Asian players, the European, and
But do
so
you
they
think that they're too surrounded by white people? Like, let's just keep it a buck. Like, if you look at
some
in many of the cases, by the time a man makes it to the NBA, he he has two groups around him, right? He has these cats he
yeah,
grew up with from the hood in most cases.
yeah,
There's that's that, and or white people who are making money off of him. So he's
yeah,
got white people making money off of him, and black people are making money off of him. But I don't typically see among the athletes men around them who are, whether a pastor, imam, a sage, somebody who just throw his arm way over his shoulder and say, "Come here, let me holler at you
yeah.
for a second. Let me talk to you." Because there's a brainwashing that I don't even think many of them recognize is occurring while they're there. They're put up as the pretty baby
Right,
and treated like this money's going to be here forever and this respect is going to be here forever and the women are going to be here forever. When we all know forever is only 2.5 years if you're lucky.
right,
If you're
right.
lucky.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are some very successful and good African American agents. And
Couple,
some of the top ones in the NBA, Rich Paul, who obviously came through
of course.
LeBron,
Yep.
Bill
Yep.
Duffy. Bill Duffy is another one. Aaron Goodwin. Aaron Goodwin at one time had LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Dwight Howard all at once.
Uh,
But he's, so there's several others I could mention, Austin Brown, but obviously there are a ton of white agents, and the most of these guys are in a position. Now, look, you or me, if we came out of good colleges and all of a sudden we had tens of millions of dollars, we would be like, man, you don't really know how to handle that, what to do.
oh,
I
I
would have
guarantee
had
you,
my
I know how I would
family,
handle it. I know,
right?
listen, I'm a Christian under construction. Let's keep it a buck. Like, I bought the
We all
land.
are, man. We all
I
are.
bought the land. I have laid a foundation. We've not put the first. We don't. I got plans for I can see it'll be beautiful. But right now we are the ground floor. So if you had given me at 19
Oh,
years old
oh, man.
$100 million, man, please, we
Right,
wouldn't be having this conversation. I
right.
promise you that right now.
No, and that's what I'm saying. So again, I would have had my parents there who knew a little bit about money to steer me in the right direction. But if you don't have that, and most of the brothers don't, they're coming from poor families and things like that, or even if they're not poor family, it's just they don't have that. A lot
Very,
of them don't.
very few people have
They
people.
know
Very few people will
how to
ever
do
meet a
real no
person
money. Right.
who could handle $100,000, let
Right.
alone
a
50
hundred
million.
million. Right. No, it's and so what happens is you are in a position where you have to trust somebody, and in most cases, you trust in somebody you don't know. Right? It's the agent comes to the school, he sends, does something to get to know you, whether it's sending people your way that you're gonna relate to, rappers, young black people, young white, women, whatever, and he gets your trust. You still don't know him that well, but you have to trust him because you don't know how to handle money. And your
Right,
family doesn't really know how to handle it. And what happens is now agents are limited in the NBA to getting 4% of a contract. And some of them get less than that, 1%, 2%, whatever. But what a lot of them do is they handle all your stuff. So they
the
handle your
ancillary.
marketing.
Yeah,
And then they hook you up with their marketing guy, and then that guy will get like 20% of whatever he hooks you up with. You know what I mean? So, and also I have to say this, unfortunately, man, some athletes have been burned by family members or friends that they grew up with that get caught up into the life themselves. I know one, and again, I won't name names.
yeah, of course.
One family member of a player was taking money from the player. There's a few I can think of,
It's one that
and
just
they
showed up
don't
on the
know it.
internet.
It's just a little here or there. It's just $100 here, $1,000 there. You make it so much that you don't miss that. And next thing you know, you find out this guy's taking $100,000, several hundred thousands of dollars from you, if not more. And so in those situations, a lot of guys lose their trust, even sometimes for family members or some other African Americans because they've been burned sometimes. And so it's just I mean, like I said, what I would love to do is have, and I had, man, back in 2014, Shaquille O'Neal, and he did it through Credit Suisse Bank. And Credit Suisse wanted to like meet some prominent African American males and, get their business ultimately. But they put together a weekend, and it was like 40 high,
Net
productive,
worth.
very productive and wealthy African American men. Bob Johnson, Shaq. I was there. Torre,
Yep,
the rap, writer.
yeah.
Um, two of the wealthiest African Americans through real estate, were there, and it was man. So we were at Shaq's house in Orlando, and we had these. It was very informal. We had panel discussions. We played basketball. You could play golf. You could get in the spa. We went to an Orlando Magic game, but it was and you had informal discussions and stuff. And I to my knowledge, it was all about like let's do something, come together and do something. And to my knowledge, nothing really
Stay
did.
right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. I'm here in Austin, as I mentioned, for a conference called Black X, and it's Austin members of the Black community here who are coming together. And you, you touched on something that's so important, and it's an experience that many of us have had, and I had too. In 2002, I called a meeting at my house, as as small as it was, and we sat around my dining room table, all Black educators,
Okay.
all Black. And I had this idea. I never met anybody who had done this before, but I had an idea that we could probably start a school.
So
I felt like
was
I
this
seen,
before Capital
yeah,
Capital Prep was
this is
already open?
before. This is, no, it
Oh,
wasn't open. This is
Oh,
not.
wow.
This is before there was even a capital prep.
Okay.
I was running an upper bound program in Hartford, and so I'd seen so many of us working in other places, and this upper bound program put me in uh, neighborhood schools where I would see my kids in there, and they were struggling, and I would say, I could suck at least as bad as these guys. Why
Right.
can't I? Why can't I do it?
Right.
And so I pulled together this group of people, and for the community from which we were coming, they were the movers and the shakers in that community.
Yep.
We had an all black front to back, right? Light skinned guys got to really go hard for that stuff. So I had to really make sure they understood we were going to be bliggity black. And it, we had a man, we had a typical first black meeting was took too long,
Yeah.
spoke too much.
Yeah.
But when we were done, we had a really good plan. If we ever have another meeting, I bet it'll be as good as that one because
That's phenomenal.
the,
So did that lead
it
to?
actually didn't. It didn't.
So
To
it was
your
a
point,
good meeting. It was
good
a
meeting
one-time meeting
that
that
turned
led.
into nothing.
Wow.
Turned into nothing. It turned into nothing. We as a community can convene like nobody's business. What you,
Yep.
a black person will throw a black professional will throw a convention faster than you could say Black Baptist.
Yep. Yep.
We will convene and we'll buy up all the white hotels and get all the white restaurants and come and dashiki it
Yep.
out that we got from Chinese store, and we will
Yep.
go there and we will put on the aesthetic of blackness, and everyone will be uplifted and
Yep.
excited and going to go back and do what? I remember when I was in Philly, I saw your one of your daughters graduated from Penn.
Yep.
My son just
Oh,
graduated from
wow.
there. I went there as well.
Congratulations.
Yeah, likewise. So when we were planning the Million Man March, I mean, I just like I couldn't get there fast enough. And I just know what that feeling felt like. And to know that so many of us were there and so
Yep.
many of us came away, you couldn't tell me. I mean, I could have walked back from DC. I could have walked and wouldn't have known because
Right.
I was just that jacked.
Cloud nine. Right.
So how do we take us from the convenings and the meetings and what have you to the action? How do we take this from there?
Man. What I was going to say, and it just about what I feel is needed. Now it is another meeting. But it would be if I could do what we did at Shaq's with 30 athletes, not even 30, 15 to 20 black athletes, 10 to 15, and expose them to people like you in education, economists, and make presentations. Because I feel like athletes and entertainers could use some of their, not even their own money, but connections to help fund little prep. Like schools that have shown we can educate our youth and send them to college and they'll be fine. We should be like that should be in every NBA city.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
one of
so,
the
but that we have one thing is we have to be in a space where we can talk black
and trust each other.
and trust each other. And so I I I don't know the answer because obviously you have to talk it out, you have to come up with plans. And we've had trouble, as you said, as a people doing that. We can talk, we can throw the party, we can throw the meeting, but we got to do it. Like, I'll give you an example. You brought up the photo, the famous photo of Ali, Kareem, Jim Brown from Ohio, Cleveland in the late 60s. Jim Brown tried to, he wanted that to grow into what he called the Black Economic Union, I think was the name. And which is some like I'm talking about like some type of getting a funding that could help black people. And nothing came. They did it locally. It still exists, I think, today, but it's very small. It never became anything. My thing, because we show that photo and we're all proud of it. Oh, they was look at what they were doing, man. That's when we was telling you for that time, late 60s, that was great. That was a courageous act. Just because you could have, blacks were still being killed and stuff like that at that point. But today, we need more than that. We need more than a great photo. You know what I mean? We need more than a lot of talk about what we gonna do in this. We need to come together and have plans. And I feel like, Steve, we're very reactionary in that when there's when there's an overt situation of incident of racism, George Floyd or something like that, then we're up in arms and we want to, do something and have things done and all that, change things. But when there's nothing like that, we're just we relax and we just
Yeah.
kind of go about whatever's going on. We need to be building constantly, even in peacetime, if you will.
You,
When something like that's not happening.
you bring up a great point. So I ask you, as somebody who does communicate with these men as often as you do, um, what would you tell them? How would you walk? Because you mentioned Kyrie's he's a young dude. He's still a young dude. He's still a young dude. How would you walk them through how they could maximize their platform, not just for the greater altruistic good, but for themselves?
Right. Well, one thing I used to say, as far as Kyrie, when he was, making some statements that were, messing up his credibility and things like that, when we played in Brooklyn, I was like, look, when you retire at 37 or whatever it might be, you will still be young. And you can build relationships, you can build up credibility during your career that if you want, when you retire at 37, to be an activist and to really do all the things you want to do for the Black and Native American community, then you will have built up such credibility with people that they will help you. You know what I'm saying? And you have all that time to do that stuff. You don't necessarily have to do that while you're playing. You will have plenty of time afterwards to do that. But I would also say, to players, I would say, like I said, to me, I would want to gather the players together, um, and just talk to them about, even, like, say LeBron James, what he's done. I feel like LeBron, in a lot of ways, has set a blueprint for what could be done. I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but you remember before he came into the league, a lot of guys had entourages, right? They called them entourage,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
were just their boys hanging out with them, going on the road with them, staying in hotels on the players' dime, and
I
using up a
remember
lot
Vinny
of the
Baker
players'
had a trail car. Vinny Baker had a trail car. So he had his whip, and then he had a whip behind him
right, with his
that they would.
boys and all that. Yeah, I mean, and some of these dudes, and I'm not even saying it's purposeful, but they end up using a lot of the players' money because they're basically being taken care of by the player. What LeBron did was he had his three guys, Randy, Rich, and Maverick, and he put them in positions because of his connections. He got them in positions to empower themselves. So because he was with Nike, Rich Paul got a job with Nike. Because LeBron's agent was with CAA, Rich worked for him, Rich Paul, and Rich learned how. Okay, now I'm going to become my own agent, and now Rich and Maverick are moguls in their own right. That when LeBron
Yeah,
retires, they'll be fine. I would like to see things like that instead of letting your boy just hang with you throughout your 15-year career. Tell him, yo, I'm gonna send you to college, man. You got 6 years, and ideally you do it quicker,
yeah, yeah.
but
No,
you
I hear
got
what you're
six
saying. Yep, yep,
years to
yep. It takes what
graduate.
it takes. Yeah,
When you graduate, you can come work for me. or come run my business, or something like that. I just think innovative way, and I also think with endorsers, I mean, if McDonald's comes to you, Gatorade or whatever wants to endorse you, make them do something for the Black community.
You you have the opportunity to talk to even the players in college who are now pros, always have been. If you could, who would you say what to about their responsibility as they move forward through their career? So who would be the athlete who you would talk to
In
if you could
college,
talk to them? College or pros? Who would you if you could pick a player who you felt needed the guidance of a fatherly figure, a good, solid brother, who would you throw your arm around and what would you say in his ear?
well, I mean, this one just comes to mind because he's been in trouble recently. Is Ja Morant, and trying to help, because he was on the verge of blowing it. It seems like he's gotten stuff together off the court, but and it's tough, man, because the money and the lifestyle can blind a lot of guys. I've had players who are big time superstars and have done it the right way, and I've been like, yo, I was saying, in fact, in relation to Ja, I was like, man, why don't you go talk with Ja? Why don't y'all give him, the blueprint, let him know what there's like, man, he ain't trying to listen to us. He ain't trying, like, they're not trying to, you set up businesses and been right with your money, haven't been in trouble. They not trying to hear from us. These are players. That's
And
the thing
I
is, a
believe
lot
that.
of the players aren't listening because the money, the lifestyle, the fact, it's just, it can
It's a room
blind
full of
guys.
CEOs. It's a room full of CEOs. I get it. Like,
Well,
literally, an
that's
envy.
when you say it that way, that's interesting. Because one thing when I first started covering the league, one thing that surprised me was that now players are friends and some are real tight, but in general, the players don't really kick it together. They hang with their boys
Right.
from college, high school, whatever, and they each one is doing that. I guess because they want to be the big man in their group. But going and playing sports in high school and college, my best friends were my teammates. But in the NBA, it's not, or NFL, it's not
Remember
always
that
like that.
bubble? That bubble.
Yep.
No, no. This is again. I was only a decent high school athlete. For those of us who were not blessed or cursed to have been amazing athletes, we don't have we didn't have the same bubble
No.
experience that the elite did. The elite were never on the AAU team. They played, but they were never on the
Right.
team.
Right.
There was always somebody at the end of the game. Come on, let's go.
Right.
Come on, let's
Right.
go.
Right.
Ushering them from motel to motel,
Yep.
taking them off like the show puppies that they are.
Yep.
So there, but who would you, if you could pick a person, if it's Ja, who would you throw your arm around, whether you thought he was going to listen or not, who you think is worth the conversation, even if he hates you for it? What would you say to him? Who
Well,
would it
I
be?
would want to talk, and he wouldn't hate me for it. I would want to talk probably with Jaylen Brown because he's
Okay.
he's actually said, like he wants to do some stuff. And I think, and I'm not saying he doesn't. I haven't seen him doing anything that's not good. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where his stuff stands at this point, but I would say, like the athlete and the entertainer are not supposed to have all the answers, right? He's I don't expect the athlete to know how to start a school or a business. But if we can link him up, so I would say with Jaylen wanting to do a Black Wall Street, well, do you have, and again, it don't have to be just Black businessmen or Black lawyers, but certainly some should be like, are you talking with people who are experts in this, what you're trying to do? And not just white ones, because a lot of them will, you mentioned it, you got your boys you grow up with that you hang with. And then in a lot of cases, the people taking care of your business and your money are white.
And their partner.
Yes, yes. And the whole room. Now you're maybe your agent or maybe there's a black face here or there, but
No, but
so
I'm
many of
saying
the people
the
are
only
white.
black people in many, especially once you get to a certain level, for a lot of these athletes, the only black people are in their
Yeah,
past
yeah,
and are not in a position to help them get to their future. Their wife may be white.
yep, yep,
Their business people are white. So they end up being the black person in their orbit.
yep, yep. And a lot of ways, one way that a lot of them maintain their connection to the black community is through the parties or the pop culture stuff. Nothing serious, right? That's really gonna help
Very
our people.
unserious.
It's the
Very
it's the
unserious.
I'm still down because my pants sagging. I'm still
Right.
down because I hang with such and such a rapper. Right? You know what I mean? I'm at the parties, like, but when it comes to real and the white people that are advising them in a lot of cases aren't going to be, and I'm not even saying that it's always like a negative motive,
No, but
but they're not gonna they
but
don't
don't come off of
understand
that.
all the problems of our
Right.
people that we need.
But stay there for a second because what you're saying is really important and powerful. Wearing the costume of blackness, a caricaturization of the African American experience, is not how one connects to the black experience.
Right.
And the costuming of it is what a lot of these cats do. What I find especially funny, speaking of schools, is some of your favorite rappers who've been successful. Man, please. A, they moved out of the hood.
Yep.
And B, their kids go to elite private
Yep.
schools.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
60, $70,000 a year. Like, what are you doing here,
Yep.
Jada? Like, like
Right.
their
Right.
kids go, you're
And
like, wow.
that's where because there is this feeling that if you didn't grow up in the hood, you're not really black. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I
And
do
yet,
know.
a
Absolutely.
lot of the people that promote that mentality, like you said, they out once they got the chance, they out of the hood. Their kids are growing
First
up out of the hood.
chance they get.
Yep.
First chance they get. My children in our schools, they're not talking about, look, I want to spend my whole life in Harlem. I'm trying to stay forever in Bridgeport. I'm trying to be in the Bronx forever. They're trying to get the first thing moving. And you know who's trying to make sure that happens? This
Yep.
guy. Like,
Yep.
peel out, come back when you got something. You can't save me until you put the mask on your face.
Right.
You can't stop me from drowning unless you can swim. So don't
Yep.
come up here and drown with me. I
Yep.
don't want you drowning with me. Go handle your business. Come back and see what you can do.
Right.
But I literally can't. We got to. I know you have
We could be
a billion
for
things to do,
hours, man.
and I want to make sure that we do because I do think that there does need to be a very real conversation with some of these brothers. I'm gonna tell you something. This could sound crazy. Steve Harvey does this mentoring camp
Yeah.
for young boys, and I bet you the same thing could be done for some of these young athletes. If somebody could get them in a room,
Yeah.
everybody take your phone and put as far away from you as possible, so nobody's going to record anything here
Yep.
at
Yep.
all.
Yep.
But we're going to shut this door and we have grown man conversations. First thing we're going to do is talk about your dad. We're gonna have that conversation.
Yep.
Then we're going to talk about just challenges with faith because some of these dudes have gone to churches or mosques
Yep.
and things didn't go right.
Right.
Bad people in those organizations too.
Yep.
And
Yep.
not just in a sexual way, I'm
No,
saying
but
it just bad people in those
yeah,
organizations too.
using
They're
them and
people,
stuff like that. Yeah.
right? Using them. And don't feel comfortable in schools because there are bad people there too. So there are a lot of people around them who've made them afraid, and they're phenotypically incapable of showing vulnerability because they're gigantic. Most people don't realize how big some of these dudes are.
Man, people don't think of Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan as big. They 6'6". If Michael Jordan walked in the room, which you would be like, man, this dude is humongous.
Gigantic.
Think about you can go years, decades in regular life without seeing a person that's 6'6".
That
Very good.
and you could go. I know you've seen them. I've seen easily 5,000 amateur games, maybe 10,000. I could round up to 10 and
Yep.
feel like I wouldn't be making it up. You could go to 10,000 amateur games and never see a pro.
Oh yeah,
Never,
absolutely,
never,
absolutely.
never. You could be at such and such high school and such, and that dude is the best dude you've ever seen.
Yep,
But
yep.
oh, he's going to the league, sis. The league of voters, maybe. That's about it. Like your son is 5 foot
People
nothing.
don't
This
know
is
how
not gonna
big
happen
these
for him.
dudes are.
They
You
really
know.
do not understand it. They don't understand it. And so those men have been so apex in a particular skill for so long that they've never been made to feel comfortable feeling vulnerable.
Yeah, no, it's
It,
good. It's
so in the opportunities I've had with some of these cats, some, obviously I won't name them. Um, they've come to me in a vulnerable space. Especially the cats who are no longer in the league
oh
when all of it is
yep.
gone, when the women
It's
are in the
hard.
rear
It's
view,
hard
when the
adjusting.
women are now just babies'
Yep,
mothers now they're not prospects for the night. They're
yep.
just a headache that you have that you're fighting for custody with, who who you know trying to bleed you out,
Yeah,
straight
man.
trying to bleed you out. It would be interesting to see if there was a mentoring camp for these men, because I see
Yeah,
you doing that with King.
yeah. We want to try because we have a lot of ex athletes that are involved, and we want to try to set it up where we can start getting, you know, something in place to kind of work with the current athletes in that situation. But it's challenging because of the seasons. The seasons are things are so demanding on them, and then getting the time to do it with them. But yeah, man. I mean, I just feel like not. I don't want to put too much on our athletes and entertainers, but I feel like as we fight for justice and equality in our society, I feel like we have a few weapons. One of them, I guess, is the vote. I guess, but that would be one. But then we have our consumerism, right? I think that's a weapon if we want to boycott or anything. We've seen that in the past. And another one is our dominance of popular culture through sports and entertainment. And because our athletes and some
It's been an amazing time I had tonight, and I suspect Brother Broussard is having issues with his internet. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. It was a fantastic conversation. I suspect we'll do it again. We'll run this back. You take good care.